I'm JD. Welcome to my channel. Please subscribe. Please hit like. And I've got stuff here. So I've got a lathe. This is a peerless watchmaker's lathe. And this is a pretty cool lathe. I'll describe this in a second. I can move this up here a bit. And here I've got a Borel stand. And this is a stand to mount the watchmaker's lathe on. And then here I've got hard to find, but a very nice counter shaft in pretty darn good condition. And all of this is going to be mounted on the Borel stand. But the first thing I need to do is to remove this leg from the lathe. So one of the Bibles on using a lathe is called The Modern Watchmaker's Lathe and How to Use It by Archie Perkins. And this has got all kinds of good information about the lathe, and we'll use this to reference the parts. Alright, with some assistance, I'm going to go through the parts of the lathe. Here we have a lathe bed, and this is usually made of steel. This is a peerless lathe made in the USA. This is the pedestal for the lathe. This whole part here is called the headstock. Right here is the tip over tool rest, and this is the tailstock, and it's got a drilling pump right here, which is pretty handy. And we'll show you that in a few seconds here. And then you have the spindle, I believe. Let me look this up here. Oh, what do we call that? That is called okay, what are the parts of a lathe? So I'm going to go through this really quickly, but I'm going to do it with the assistance of the book I have on my lap here, so I don't screw this up. And I'm just going to go it one at a time. So we have the lathe bed. This is this part of the lathe here. And this is the pedestal of the lathe. This whole part here is the headstock of the lathe. And this is the tailstock over here, and we've got a plunging or pump action tailstock here, and then we have a tip over tool rest. This is the tool rest, and this is the tip over tool rest, and we'll show you that in action after. Then we have the headstock spindle, which is right here, and let me just pull that out and you can see it turn. There we go, right there. That's the headstock spindle. And then we have the draw-in spindle, which is this here. And the collet, there's already a collet on this. Just pull that out here. It's probably a collet I've been missing for a while. This is the draw-in spindle right here. And then this is the locking nut for the spindle right here. And then over the top of this, you've got some dust shields. So you have a dust shield in the front here and a dust shield here, and these are just drawn back for oiling. So you just take these dust shields, you pull them back like that, and right on the top you see a little groove, and that's where you oil the lathe. And then you have the locking nut for the lathe, and that's back here. This is a locking nut which locks the spindle in place. And then you have the let me see, you've got, I got to keep going quickly or I'll lose your attention here. The locking lever, right? So you've got a locking lever which is on the back here, like this, and this pin right here is used to address the indexing on the back of the lathe. So as you can see in the back here, we have on this pulley, you've got an indexing here that allows you to turn that and index it. There's usually 4 of these marked at every 90 degrees, so you can get to 90 degrees quickly if you're going to build or make a if you're going to make a stem, for example. You need that to be locked every 90 degrees. Let me see, what do I got here? Locking nut washer would be on the inside there, and tailstock spindle locking ring, draw-in spindle, no, that's fine. R, J, no, we've got that, no problem. I don't have that on this. I've got a pump here, which is great. So this is an 8mm lathe. measured from the center down. So that's why it's called an 8mm lathe. And if I'm wrong, let me know, because I'll go research why is the lathe called a 8mm lathe. So there's 8mm lathes and 6mm lathes. And if you're going to do watch work, you want to make sure you use an 8mm lathe, because you can get collets quite easily with the right threading for an 8mm lathe. These are the collets here. Let me put my book away now. And that's enough, I guess. So you can unlock the tip over tool rest from the base here, and it slides around, but we're going to wait till we mount this thing and then have a look at how this all is configured and how it all works. Now I'll put this down on my old wooden desk. Now funny thing here is that years ago I configured, I basically put a hole in the desk to allow me to use one of these lathes in the desk, but the hole is over on the side here, and I've got cables going through it right now, so I never used the hole properly. But you've got the pedestal here, if that's what it was called, right? And this big, huge nut that tightens on and tightens this lathe bed on, and that would typically be in a bench of some sort, and then you'd have the either the motor directly in there or a counter shaft and then the motor. And I'll show you, just before I continue here, I'm going to bring up a motor that's pretty serious here. I've got many lathes, by the way, and many motors. This motor here actually works. I plugged it in a few seconds ago downstairs, and that's there we go. It's basically a giant variable resistor that scrapes on the side here. So, and this is an old motor, folks. Let me just move this up a bit. So here we go. So this motor, these worry me. These always worry me. Touch it with your socks. Make sure you get socks on so you don't get electrocuted. So, and these are all 2-prong, not 3-prong, so they're not grounded. And this motor, it works actually quite well. I'm going to be brave and maybe spin it for you, but there we go. And there's the spindle for the motor here, and there's 3 different levels, 3 gearings, I'll call it, for the motor. And these motors, usually there's a place to oil the motors on the side, and yeah, there's right there and on the other side. So you can usually find the bushings in there, and then some of them have areas where you just oil it from the top. And you've seen me use various lathes over the years, and they're all different. So this lathe is the L&R. So this is a watchmaker's lathe, L&R motor here, and there's all kinds of data on this particular motor. 115 volts of pure power. It says 10 horsepower, but there's no way. I think it's probably 1/10 horsepower. Anyway, so, and I'm going to just plug this in just so you can see if I get electrocuted, at least it's on video, and maybe I'll make a couple bucks on YouTube from the electrocution. So I'm just going to take all these parts here, and I just saw the lights dim, and I didn't even plug this in yet. I already duct taped down here. I put some duct tape down here. I just put my light on a little higher. So yeah, there we go. I put some duct tape down here when I bought this. There's some holes in here that potentially could mount on this. If I mount this though, then likely not going to be able to mount the counter shaft. I'd rather have the counter shaft mounted and have a sewing machine motor in here, but I'll show you how this baby spins, okay? And I'm going to touch this with a cloth so I don't electrocute myself. I'll plug it in over here, and okay, stand by, stand back, because I could go flying here. All right, it's plugged in, and I'm going to use my Ottawa Police Department toque. So you need to have a police toque at all times when you're using this. I'm going to use this to turn this motor, and we're just going to see what happens here. And there it is. So it does work. And this thing goes pretty darn fast. And there's a lot of torque on this thing too, so it does work, and I can use it for as a lathe. So that's that. Now the first thing I need to do aside from try not to get electrocuted, is take the pedestal off the lathe. Now I put a little marking on it here saying it's from the peerless lathe because I've bought a lot of these Burrell stands, and hopefully I'd never have to do this, but someday I may have to actually put them back into their configuration. But if I ever sell one of my lathes, I'll probably sell it and then provide the pedestal with it as well if the individual wants to remove it from the stand. So I'm just trying to adjust my wrench here so I can grab this piece here. And I've done this before. Sometimes they're hard, sometimes they're not, but usually you just do that and this comes off. It seems to be loosening up a little bit. Let's take that off. I'm going to hit my camera with this. It's a little bit tricky to remove. Adjust my camera. Oh, there we go. Just loosened up. Just loosened up. So now I can just take that off. So let me just dip that down in the corner here and press the famous release button on this vice grip. And I believe I can just turn this now and it'll come off. Oh, there we go. So there's the pedestal. And this baby wasn't easy to take off. I think it was harder turning inside of this than it was in the lathe bed. So that's the pedestal. I'll just set that aside. And now what you do is you move my mouse out of the way so it doesn't get too crushed. I've got to take this and mount it on here. And let me just put this down for a second, and it goes like this. So to mount this properly, I've got to move it in the configuration. Basically, these are round, or roundish, I guess, and this is round here, and you've got round here and where it attaches here, where the screw is, and or the bolt goes in, and then you've got a round base here, so it has to be aligned with the round base and not here on the lathe bed. So if you just put it down like that, you'll see that that's not aligned properly. But if I move it over a bit, then it aligns nicely. So there, now it's sitting on the bed. Luckily, when I bought this thing, it already came with a big nut. I don't know whether the Burrell nut will fit the lathes. So just spin this around here. I took the mat off my table here. This table is old. This is an old table I used to do engineering work with in the 80s. So I'm not too concerned about drilling holes in it. And they made them tough back in the day. They made them tough. So I take this tape off, which is Department of Incredibly stuck on, and just move the lathe bed off this for a second here to get the tape off. And now what I'm praying here is that this nut will fit the lathe bed. Sometimes you got to play around here to make this work. It's not always a guarantee that everything fits. So if I just do this here. And shout out to a few people out there. Vernon, Sonny, you guys are gold, Jerry, gold, I tell you. Now I'm going to screw this in here and pray. Look at that. So that fits there, but it tightens up pretty fast. So I'm not sure if there's enough real estate between the hole here and back here for this to actually work. And I'm going to go into my department of other nuts here and see if I can find a different one, because there might be a different configuration of that nut. Let me go see if I can find that. Holy shit, this guy's got a lot of washers. I do have a lot of washers. Every time I go to the hardware store, I buy way more than I need. And I end up with a lot of crap. So I think there's a way of opening this that it won't spill all over the place. There's secret ways of opening these things. So there's a bunch of washers. So I want a washer that will, the nut will go through and it'll fit in the slot here. So will that one work? Perhaps. So let me see if I got a different one here. So this next one over here, maybe this is the one here, because that's almost right. And I can file it, right? There is the ability to file. I have the skill to file that washer flat. Yeah, these ones here, they'll fit in there, but they're like the same size as the head, right? So I think this one here is a good one. So I'm just going to close this amazing thing of washer. And what I'm going to do is this fits nicely like that. It gives it a little bit more width, like this. And then I think I need to file it. Let me look and see how much stuff I got sticking out. There's not a lot, right? So that probably won't work because there's not enough. Now I could put 1,000 washers on this one here and use this nut, right? Just stack up the washers, and then I have no issue at all. Let me think. Yeah, if I file this washer along two edges, then it will fit on there. So let me grab my file and file. And to file this properly, this is not something you really need to watch, but I'm going to do it anyway. But I'm going to see if this is, I'd love this for this to fit, but I'm going to take my vice grip here and just grab this washer mid-center like that. Just clamp that down nicely, and then I can take the file here and just file the end of it until it's got a flat surface, right? This shouldn't take too long to file off, but I'll be back. There, it's filed flat on one side, and I'm just going to rotate that to the other side and file the other side flat. That's one side flat. I'm just going to file the other side. So there we go. They filed two flat spots in the washer. Now it fits in the slot. The issue, I think, still is how much is there to grab on the threads. I think that's still a bit of a problem, but we'll try it out and see. Alright, I didn't want this whole video to be about me putting a screw in, or a screw into a hole. But so be it. I'm just lining this up here as best as I can and see if I can find the hole. Find the hole. It's a game that the kids can enjoy. Just buy yourself a whole bunch of nuts and bolts and see if you can find the hole. I don't think this is working. Let me just do it without filming. So I've got this washer configured properly with two flat ends. So this is perfect. I'm going to go down in my dungeon and use my Dremel tool and cut off a whole whack of thread and see what I can do. I think I needed to take off about that much, but I think I'll cut about half the thread off and then use the nut from that perspective, because this nut was fitting nicely. All right, the magic of the Dremel tool. I've taken a lot of thread off this specific bolt, nut and bolt. I always ask my wife what's the difference between the nut and the bolt. So it looks like this one will work well because it's got the right depth. So I'll screw this one in. I won't bother the pain of you watching me do this. So now that I get the lathe bed on, it's time to actually put on the counter shaft. And that's this beastie here. And this counter shaft would just mount right around here. So I usually have to drill holes for the counter shaft. It's usually not, although the back bolt is the most important because there's not a lot of pressure on this, but I think that the rear bolt, if I can get these two bolts into these holes, that might suffice for holding the counter shaft in place. And I know I can rotate this just by loosening this here. I can rotate the counter shaft without a problem. So when you set this up, you got to align your spindles. So this is the counter shaft spindle, and I want my headstock to be right at the back, so it's kind of flush against the back like this and tight. And and then I want my the smaller part of this gear to be lined up with the bigger part of this gear. So I'm going to eyeball it like this, but where is it with respect to my counter shaft? That's the question. And I want to make sure my counter shaft has got enough real estate to do what it does best, which means, see, if I line that up like this, yeah, like that, you loosen this here and twist it. And it doesn't have to be way up in the air like it was. So it can be down like this, right? Not a problem. So that gets me one screw in here, and then I can drill two holes in the back, right, to fasten these. And I don't need that much distance between these two pulleys, right? And that'll give me plenty of real estate for a motor in the back to drive this big pulley, right? That'll be the tricky part. And these pulleys are all movable. So if I just plant a screw through this one here to start off with. So I'm going to plant a screw into this one here to start off with, right? I'll just tip this a bit so I can get the screw in there. And I know these screws are snug, but they do fit. They're very snug though. There. So that screws in there. There's a washer on the other side too. And then I can mount the base here, and I'll be able to then mark this, right? I'm not sure if a wing nut will work on this. Hopefully so. I got all kinds of these wing nuts. It just depends on the dimension of the wing nut and the threading. If the wing nut doesn't work, then other stuff will work. Yeah, I think the wing nut's not the right size. Let's just grab one of these nuts here. This is stuff you fart around with on the weekends. That nut works fine. And I don't care if there's leftover real estate here. I'll be tightening this from the back end anyway. And I want to make sure that I can get in there, and I'm maximizing the use of this base here, but I'm not too close that I can't actually work it, right? See if I can tighten that a little more. There, like that. Let me get the right bit out here so I can tighten this on the bottom. And then I should be able to take a pencil or a marker or something and just mark that. But I'm going to probably go through there with a screw, like just basically mirror it or mar it with a screw. Just tighten that up a bit, like that. So So that's in there nicely. It's a shame that I gotta basically, it's a shame I've got to drill a hole in this nice base here, but so be it, right? The other thing I've got to do then is move the spindle over a bit so it lines up. It's actually not too bad right now. It just has to move just ever so slightly, and that should be able to move over. And I still need to clean this, but I love cleaning them when they're on the pulley, so you can just sort of run it and you're cleaning it while it's running. This thing loose? Yeah, there you go. Now I can just move that over. I'll eyeball what straight is. I'm trying to get the let me just show you here. I'm just trying to get this gear lined up with this, and I just look straight down the line like that without a problem. And then once I've got it lined up, I can tighten the screw on the pulley. And these are high quality pulleys. They don't take much tightening here, and you just use a little bit of. I use for my lathe. I've got this kind of oil here. It's 0W20 synthetic oil for the lathe, and that stuff works so well. You start spinning that, and I'm telling you, it's perfect, right? This gear here I could use for another to drive another pulley for maybe a pivot polisher or something like that in here. So I'd use that for that. And then once I get the motor mounted here, I've got to line this up with the motor. So in this case, obviously the motor has to be on this side, right? Spinning. So, and the motor I just showed you might work if there's enough real estate back here. So let's just drag that up and see. All right, there's the motor sitting on the base, but I'm telling you, it's just too big. So if I were to use this lathe without a counter shaft, I could run the motor directly to the lathe itself without the counter shaft on it, right? So I want to put like a sewing machine motor in there. I may still have some left over because I had a bunch of them, or you can buy them too for like 20 bucks and use those. Well, just so I can give you some satisfaction today, I'm going to set it up with the big motor in the back and remove the counter shaft, because this is definitely got enough torque to do watchmaking work without the counter shaft. And I'll set this up later with the counter shaft and a sewing machine motor. All right, just mounting the motor on here without the counter shaft. It's an old motor, man. Old motor. It is just, these things I think were made for these old motors. And you've got, see if I've got slots here. Slots here. Yeah, they almost fit. So I'm just going to see if I can screw this down. So I think this might actually fit through the back. Like that. I think I just have to turn the screw a bit to see if I can find its way home. Come on. The other one did fit in there. Try this one here. Oh my God. I'm going to make a really fast video with all this stuff in it. Try the front one here. See if this one fits. I think if you pound it enough, it should work. I think this one might fit. Come on. I'm going to drill those out. These two fit here though. So then this would have to be sized to fit around this to work. So you size it loose, heat it up, melt it together. I need to switch cameras here. There. So I just want to size this. I just want to try this out. Try it out. I want to spin the lathe. So I'm going to take, if I had a regular motor, yeah, I don't need a controller with a regular motor. So I want to size this out. So here's what you do. You get myself a knife blade. Let me see. There's a knife blade. There's a knife blade there. I need myself a knife blade like this. And let me just see if I can get the right size here. I'll cut it where the old seam was. So I'll just cut it right here. That's the old seam right there. And then I'll just go back a bit like that. I don't really want to reuse the old seam here, so what I'll do is I'll measure it from around right around here. It's kind of awkward here. Haven't done this one in a while. Usually I make my own pulleys. So I've got that a little bit tight here. So it doesn't need to be super tight, but I've got a little bit tight. And I just want to cut it off. Right around there. Like that. Now one thing you got to remember when you're putting lathe pulleys on is always have the lathe pulley inside of here, because I did this years ago and totally effed it up trying to get all this stuff on my desk here. Just move all this crap around. So this pulley is going to go from here, and it's going to attach to itself right about like that. And maybe it's a smaller pulley I'll use. So what I need to do is get these two pulleys attached. And the way you do that, see if I can remember how to do this. I need to get a stand out. It's easier to do, I think, with a stand. Everything's falling out of my freaking drawers. Pissing me off. Anyway, I'm not going to do the audio on this anyway. I'm just going to play it at 4 times speed. You're going to go, what the hell is he doing? So I think you got to put the knife, you put the knife blade in here like this, like that. You can use any kind of knife. So if I were to pick a different knife, here I'll pick my the old father-in-law's knife. Like that, and all you want to do is heat that up and then push it together. So I'm going to put some better glasses on right now though.